Dear viewers, wherever you are, hello and welcome to this new episode of your program, Out of the Box. The relationship between faith and intellect, philosophy and religion. This has been an eternal question, really. Do they complement one another? Do they contradict one another? Do they have a supplementary relationship? Is there a paradox between them? This has been an ongoing debate for decades, if not for centuries. Tonight, we'll be talking about Thomas Aquinas. Thomas Aquinas was an Italian theologian and philosopher who lived in the 13th century in Italy. He was greatly affected by the very prominent student of the School of Athens, Aristotle. He had a very special view about the relationship between science and faith. And to delve more into the crypts of this topic, I'm really delighted to be accompanied tonight by my very frequent and very distinguished guest, the writer and the freelance journalist, and more than that, the very prominent thinker, Emad Barsoum. Emad, hello and welcome to the program.
Mohamed, hello. Thank you so much for having me again. And it's always a pleasure to be with you and with your very honorable guests and wonderful guests and wonderful viewers, of course.
The honor is always mine. And to start off, the topic that Thomas Aquinas is discussing, the relationship between mind and faith, intellect and religion, philosophy and so on. And actually we can say that Thomas Aquinas was one of the very first theosophists. So there is a science that started emerging that was called theosophy, which is the mix of theology and philosophy. So Thomas Aquinas was a theologian and a philosopher, so he started to sort of find some form of, to integrate actually, both of religion and philosophy together. My first and foremost question to you, do you see religion and philosophy? Do you see mind and faith? Do you see them as water and sugar? So the more you stir them, the more they would mix? Or do you think that they are like water and oil? No matter how much you stir them, they would never mix.
Well, we are discussing today a very special philosopher / theologist because in my opinion, he has lots of contradictions, but we will go to this later on. However, back to your question, philosophy and religion, or mind and faith. I believe that they are, as you said, the water and the oil. And it's very simple, because if you have to have faith, you have to actually lock your mind and do not question things. And that's what most of the religions, they ask their followers. Do not think too much, do not ask questions, and you will get the blessings of the religion that will come into you, makes you open your eyes and you see the light. But once you ask one question, that's called the philosophy, of course. This is the theory of thinking, the knowledge, to acquire knowledge. And once you do this, you are out of faith, according to the theologists. And this will, of course, we will go to, as we said, Thomas Aquinas later on, when he actually tried to build the bridge between those two things. And we will see through our discussion together, Mohammed, that he didn't succeed in it. He didn't succeed to stir the oil and water together.
So a follow-up question here is, do you think that faith and religion are interchangeable? Are they synonymous? Or do you see a differentiation between faith and religion, between a faithful person and a religious person?
Of course, there is a kind of interrelation as well as differentiation as well, because people would have faith, but they do not practice religion. And that's what we call them spiritual. They believe in a superpower, in a creator that made this life come to existence. However, they do not practice a certain religion to reach that stage of faith. On the other side, you'll find lots of religious people who defend the religion and would even go further to achieve bad things and horrible things with the name of the religion, but they don't have faith, because if they have the faith, they will not be able to take life away of others. So, of course, it is very contradicting in some cases and in others. So it's all about the person. It's all about the mental ability to understand faith and being religious. And that's why you will have a very, very wide variety of people who are religious in different degrees and who have faith in different degrees. Sometimes they meet in the middle, sometimes they are far apart. But of course, it's interchanging on different scales.
So by definition, would you say that religion is abiding by rituals and, doing things like pilgrimage, fasting, going to holy sites, attending masses or like prayers and so on, while faith is more the spiritual part or more the, uniting or becoming at one with the Creator? Is that how you see it?
Not exactly, but the first part of your assumption is true. I agree with it, that religion is linked to rituals and practices and some duties that the religious person have to do towards his religion and based on the orders given to him or her. But on the other side, faith also has some rituals. Some people with faith, they do their own rituals, and you see them. You'll find it very, very obvious in the Abrahamic religions, actually. Which three of them, they would say that, I don't go to church or mosque or synagogue, but I have a special relationship with the Creator. So,
okay.
So this is the faith they have. They talk to the Creator in the bedroom, wherever they want, but they don't practice any kind of religious ritual or practices. On the other side, you will find those people who go to the religious houses, organizations every week or every day even, but they don't have the faith. The faith in the meaning that the others have, which is being good and do what is right as a human being. And that's the problem, actually, if you see with the people who try to show the religion more than the faith, and those who show their faith above the religion. And that's why it's a little bit far from each other.
I totally understand what you're saying. And to go deeper, let's stop with our dear viewers with this report about Thomas Aquinas, a summary of his most important ideas, and we'll be back with the discussion.
Thomas Aquinas was a philosopher and an Italian Christian theologian who lived in the 13th century. Thomas Aquinas believed that knowledge was the light of God sent by God to man. He says that the knowledge of man is limited to the visual bodies, or to the realms of the sense and the sensed, and he is not able to know in a direct way the world that is above the sensible, or the world beyond nature. By experiencing the physical nature, humans will realize that universe must need a cause and a first maker who is God. If we can know by analyzing nature and creatures that God exists and that He is one, because His existence and unity shine throughout the wonders of the world and its good organization, however, we cannot, with our mind alone, know the essence of His will except through revelation and holy books. The limitations of our knowledge are in themselves evidence of a supernatural world. God reveals to us about this world in His holy books. Thomas Aquinas says that just as it is foolish for the peasant to say that the theories of philosophy are false, because he is unable to understand them, so it would be also foolish for a person to refuse to believe in divine revelation on the pretext that it appears to him at some points contrary to man's natural information. We must also be confident that if our information was complete, there would be no contradiction between revelation and philosophy. It is a mistake to say that an issue can be false in philosophy and true in religion. That is because all facts come from God and they are one. Scientists, philosophers, and peasants must obey the Church's decisions and believe that the Church is their guide to everything in life.
Dear viewers, after watching this report about the most important ideas of Thomas Aquinas, who was greatly affected by Aristotle, my first question to you, Emad, here would be, Thomas Aquinas' assumption says that our knowledge is always incomplete. So there are two kinds of worlds. There is the physical world and there is the metaphysical or the spiritual world. Through science, through, experiments, through observations, through empirical science, if you wish, we can find many things of the physical world. But to reach the metaphysical world, which is the more superior one, according to Thomas Aquinas, we will need to have revelation. So to what extent do you agree that our knowledge is never complete without revelation?
From a philosophical point of view and scientific point of view, of course, I disagree with this statement. Because once we need to complete our knowledge, we have to go for scientific study and research, and we have to use philosophy and logic to find answers to many knowledge or things that we don't know about anything. So if Thomas Aquinas said that, I'm 100% I disagree, because they are even contradicting. If you want to have knowledge, you should ask question, then this is not incomplete. So he himself is contradicting himself between defending the faith or defending the point of being a religious man of theology, and also he's trying to defend philosophy at the same time. In my opinion, he didn't know what he wants. And that's why even you will find out that the church at a certain point, even now, they considered him the doctor of the church, because he was trying to build this bridge between the knowledge and the faith. But also the other side, the Franciscans and the Jesuits, they didn't see it that way. They see the opposite way. They see that he's a very philosophical guy or a philosophical person who thinks in philosophy and mind over religion. That's why he's questioning things. He wants to find answers to things that should not be looked at with research, like the faith itself. So that's created lots of contradiction about him as well. I can't see really that he meant what he said, or he was trying to find the answer himself, and he couldn't. And I have to be honest, I haven't read all his books, of course, but I had bits and pieces, and I studied him in a certain stage of life, and I was in front of a person who, according to my opinion, he didn't know what he wants.
So do you think that Thomas Aquinas was the son of his time? Because, at this time, this was a very volatile and very controversial period in Christendom. And, because later on, like 2 centuries later, we had the Protestant Reformation with Martin Luther, and we had Gutenberg and the printing press. And so we had the Reformation, and this was followed by the Counter-Reformation from the Catholic Church as well. So there were the Inquisitions, there were the indulgence boxes. There is a lot of controversy about that. And so do you think that he was looking for a way out of this dilemma, of this ordeal?
Well, that's possible. That's a good actually presentation from your side, Mohammed, that he might be trying to find the way out. And we should not ignore the fact that the 13th century was the beginning of the resurrection in Europe. The
Renaissance.
Renaissance. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So this period have witnessed lots of philosophers and theologians who are trying to build these bridges between the mind, the human mind, who is questioning every day and every time about life, existence, death after death, and between the faith that was given to them as a sacred script and a very also stagnant script. So in the 12th, 13th century, 14th century, that was the movement of philosophers. And you might realize also at the same time, this happened in different places in the world. It's not only happening in Italy, it happened in France, it happened in England by the friar Occam, the very famous philosopher Occam as well, William of Occam, sorry. And also happened in the Middle East, in some Arab countries like in Iraq, in Egypt. Also, it happened later on in Andalusia. So the whole world, actually, at that point, was trying to find a link between what they were taught, what they were given and taken for granted, and what their mind is keep asking them to find.
So it was sort of a shift from Saint Augustine, because Saint Augustine or Saint Augustinus, like he was a Platonic theologian, and now we have a more radical, down-to-earth, person like Thomas Aquinas. Now, again, they would say that intellectual people or people who believe in empirical science, they would say, if I can't take it to the lab for an experiment, I will not believe it. So don't tell me things about like revelation, about angels, about demons. I cannot see these things. But the counter argument or the rebuttal here actually for Thomas Aquinas's group, they would say, you know what? Well, in the past, and this is still a valid argument for many theologians today, they would tell you, in the past, you didn't see the electrons. This didn't mean that they didn't exist. In the past, you didn't see the protons, the positrons, and so on. This didn't mean that they didn't exist. So you cannot see the angels or the demons because you are not advanced enough. And he says it's exactly like it's ridiculous for a peasant to say that he doesn't believe in philosophy because it's beyond his intellectual abilities, it's beyond his cognitive abilities. Also, it is ridiculous for humans with limited capabilities to say that they don't believe in the divine will or divine wisdom because they're not up to it. To what extent do you agree to this?
Again, you see that this is very also contradicting, because if we look at the spiritual side, or that we haven't seen the angels and demons, these things or these ideas were created in the frame of a divine theory, or a holy theory, or a superpower that cannot be touched, because as it's written in the books, he cannot be seen or touched or reveal himself. So that's what they agree on this power. On the other side, if you compare this to how a peasant cannot be or cannot understand philosophy, here is different. It's completely different, because philosophy is a science. And although it's not a protons or nuclear thing that you can see under the microscope or planets moving around, but once you talk about philosophy, it's a human science. So a science here has structure, has base, has instructions, has explanations, has arguments. So it has its arguments, but the divine power and what is related to it, like demons, angels, heaven, hell, all the stuff, is all in itself is myth, according to the other side of the philosophy. So it's something that is non-tangible, and you cannot see it. You have to believe in it. That's what they tell people. you have to have faith without proof, and that's faith.
But again, they would say, why is it not tangible? Because electrons were like, you know, they were untangible. They were not something that you can touch, you can hold in the past. And you didn't believe in them, but now when you see them. So they argue that maybe in the future, because today, you know, we see a specific spectrum of light. So we see only between infrared and ultraviolet. Anything above or less, we cannot see. But this doesn't mean that other things do not exist. Today, with modern technology, we can see beyond that spectrum, beyond the infrared and the ultraviolet. Again, we hear to a specific, you know, degree of decibels. So anything higher or lower you cannot listen to. But today science tells us things like dogs and cats can hear things we cannot hear. So they're arguing that maybe in the future, you'll be able to see angels and demons and listen to them as well with the advancement of science.
But how can I see or touch something that was created by mythologies thousands of years ago? This is something that now it's expressing my point of view. And this point of view of many people who do not try to mix the myth with the philosophy or the mind with the faith. And in fact, Thomas Aquinas himself, he made this clear in one statement, in one of his quotations. He said that to one who has faith, no explanation is necessary. To one without faith, no explanation is possible. So this summarizes everything about this point you were mentioning by Thomas Aquinas himself. So that's what I meant with the beginning, that he's contradicting. He doesn't want to argue with people without faith to convince them. At the same time, he's defending the faith that he believes in. But I think when he goes to bed at night, when he used to go to bed, he was thinking like those who have no explanation and they don't want it, because they are thinkers, they are philosophers. So we can call it, of course, with no comparison really, that he was like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. The two sides of the human mind, the good and the bad, the dark and the night and the day. So his statement himself just summarized to you everything. Faith for people, you don't need to explain anything to them. And people without faith, no explanation is possible at all. So that's what the philosophy is and what is the faith is.
Yeah, this is of course it's an ongoing argument forever. But so do you think that like science and because recently there have been a lot of people who tried to prove science by revelation and revelation by science. Do you think that this is a good argument at all? So some people would say, you know what? The earth is round. Well, actually, in the revelation, it said this a long time ago. And the revelation points to the stars, points to this and that. So all the new discoveries were already in the revelation. To what extent do you think that this argument is valid? Do you think that there is any valid connection between faith and religion, and science? Because some people would say, you know what, science changes, but religion should be permanent. So why are you trying to find a connection between a changeable thing and a permanent thing?
But I might answer with a question. Why do you want to find an answer to this, the difference between the religion and the faith? Why we are bothering ourselves with this? Although many philosophers have already drawn a line. But I will answer the part of the revelation. With the revelations, when people talked about it and they said it was written when? It was written in the first century, before BC, 1 century before BC. Most of the ancient civilizations, they have seen and explained to us lots of things about the earth, the movement of the planets and the stars, even before they find a telescope or they invented the telescope. So these things were actually the basis for some religions in the ancient civilizations. Like the Zoroastrian religion, they were counting on the planets and the stars Same thing with the Assyrian, and same thing with the ancient Egyptian. Then a few hundred years later, the Mayans also, they created their ideology and religion based on one planet, Venus. Venus actually created their civilization, or built their civilization on Venus, and all their myth and the stories of their heroes. So revelation is not something new to present to us these ideas. It is how it was presented that makes it very holy or important to the people of faith. If we have to make two categories, faith and mind or philosophy, then those people who follow faith, they liked the text or the context of the revelation, and it was more appealing to their mind because it has this power of convincing without thinking. But on the other side, a philosophy or science, you need to have proofs, mathematical equations, some kind of studies to show it. So the following of the faith will not like this methodology, and on the same side, the philosophers and thinkers and scientists, we will not take it for granted like the faithful people.
So you think that the final target really for both is conviction, but
yes,
the means of conviction is very different for both groups.
Absolutely, yes.
Last but never least, actually, and I think this is a very, very important point that he talks about. He said that since the church, and here I will expand this more than only the church, because the church for Thomas Aquinas represents the religious institution. So the same thing can be said about the mosque for Muslims, the synagogue for Jews, the temple for Hindus, etc., etc., etc. His argument says that the religious institution, since it is the abode of the faith and of the scripture, then all faithful should follow it blindly, because the ultimate truth resides within this holy institution. To what extent do you think that this is a valid argument, or what do you see of it?
Well, this could be a very valid argument to the people with faith. Of course, they acquire the power of the faith from these institutions, and these institutions actually acquire their existence because of the faith of the people. So it's a mutual relationship that both need each other. And that's why both are legitimate to each other as well. And that's the reason why he was called the doctor of church, because Thomas Aquinas can be able, or he was able to answer many difficult questions, philosophical, about faith and mind, and was trying to build these bridges. And in my opinion, because he was, again, very progressive at his time than others, he was given the title saint later on, because he was thinking much further progressive than the others. He was protecting the faith in one side and trying also to defend the faith and the church by satisfying the philosophical side of the mind, to include it in the faith and make them integrated to each other. Well, if we say this about Thomas Aquinas, then we have also to mention, since you had made this note about the institutions, he went even over and above that, and he extended his theories or beliefs or ideas to the state itself and the ruling. He was in politics too. I'm not sure that this is something would be related to our topic today, but I would like to mention it, that he is considered, or I see him as considered as one of the founders of democracy, when he stated that the people are the human being, or the person is the most important thing, and the institutions, the royal king or prince, are made or given the power to serve this human being or this person.
Absolutely, and at that time, actually, Italy was not, a very stable island, but it was in a sea of turmoil, actually.
Turmoils.
Yes.
But his theories and ideas actually were adopted in first place in France, I think maybe in Cromwell's Republic in England. And then, but for me, he's like exactly like Plato in this part. But although he's one of the Aristotle students, but he was more Plato in that one, talking about the government and the structure of the government. So that mentioned this because Thomas Aquinas was a man of state as well. Man of state, a man of religion, and a man of philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what made him so important in the development of the human sciences and the human philosophies, and also what we call it, the history of the development of human conscience as well. That's how I see him, that he was filling many gaps that were very hard for others to think about at that time.
Absolutely. Just to come to a conclusion here, and I think this is the jewel of the crown, really, is the ongoing contradiction and sometimes conflict between people who are like very classical, faithful people, and people who just resort to the intellect. So faithful people would always like to put a stigma on the people who just resort to the intellect by calling them, like infidels, etc., treating them with disdain and then exalting themselves above the others. On the other hand, thinkers or the intellectuals, the intelligentsia, they would usually exalt themselves above the faithful, and they would call them as retarded people. What is the way out of this?
First of all, I partially disagree on the second part of your definition about the intellectual and the thinkers and the the people with more scientific approach, because yes, people with faith, most of them, they would defend their ideas and belief in a very abusive way, sometimes aggressive way, sometimes beyond even the legitimate ways. And they will call the other people infidel and start even to discriminate them and boycott them. On the other side, the other intellectual level of people and the other group, they don't care much about the faithful.
But they might not. One might argue that one of them does it in a more overt, the other one does it in a more subtle manner. So the faithful would sort of severely criticize and really insult the intellectuals overtly, very openly. But yes, the intellectuals would do it in a more subtle, more discreet manner behind closed doors. So in their private talks, they would talk about the faithful as retarded people.
Maybe they do it behind the closed doors among each other. Of course, I agree with that. But they don't go out in media and start to throw accusations against the people of faith, and they don't call them that they are stupid or they're ignorant publicly. Which, on the other side, the faithful people, they would go and actually slander others and also might use violence against others to show that they are infidel. And that's a big difference, because the people who would not follow a certain dogma and their minds are flexible to accept and reject and discuss different ideas and theories, they are more well-behaving. And because their integrity comes from the inner soul or the inner conscience of the human being. No book told them that they have to do so and so to be good people, that they have to do this and the right things. But what tells them the right from wrong is the human conscience, which was born with the human beings and which was written first time or mentioned first time 9,000 years ago in ancient Egypt, when we call it the dawn of conscience, when they started to come up with the first religion to shape the life at that time, and it was the Ra as a god and so on. You know the story, of course. So, and that's the beauty of the people with intelligence and intellect. They always refer to their human conscience. That's why they are peaceful. They don't carry knives and guns in front of the faithful, like the faithful do to them.
I really hope so, that there will be an end to all kinds of violence from all parties. And at the end, really, I can't thank you enough, as usual, Emad, for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Mohammed. Before we go, I just wanted to mention something that
Please.
was very surprising to me when I read it.
Please.
And it was said by Thomas Aquinas. Thomas Aquinas said something that would make you think all night, make our audience also think all the nights and days to come about this. He said, beware of the person of one book. Try to explain this and you will find many things behind it. Who is the one person with one book? Is it a religion? Or is it somebody who doesn't read at all and he carries only one book? But usually the people who didn't carry any books in life except one book was a book of religion. So beware of those who carry one book.
It's such a very, very insightful note. And on this note, I really have to thank you very much again. And definitely we need to think, we need to ponder, and we need to really, have more insightful thoughts about things and reflect on things more than just looking at the facade.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much again, Emad, for being with us.
Thank you, Mohammed. Pleasure always to be with you. Thank you for all your audio.
So mine.
Thank you.
And dear viewers, if we were to conclude here, like whether you're skeptic, you're dogmatic, you're a theist, you're an atheist, you're agnostic, you're a Gnostic, doesn't matter, but I believe that the ultimate goal is the betterment of human life. And for the faithful people, you believe that this creator, whoever that creator may be, is omnipotent, so invincible as well, omnipresent, and omniscient, knows everything, he's available everywhere. So certainly, this divine is fully aware that there are different people, and or he would not be omniscient. And no one can hide away from him, or he would not be omnipresent. And if he does not like those people who do disbelieve in him, he could completely annihilate them, just wipe them off the face of earth. If he can't, he would not be omnipotent and would not be invincible, and therefore he would not be a god. So he still keeps them alive, and he still gives them food, water, sustenance, everything like everyone else. So apparently there is a divine wisdom behind that. So let's not be more royal than royalty itself, okay? So if the God wants those people to live, then how dare you really do his work for him? So he gave them the free will. He wanted them to live thus. And then if they commit any kinds of sins, then it's his judgment, not yours. And again, for the intellectual people, people who might be taking the extreme, again, the mind that you're so proud of and you exalt yourself with is what makes you respectable. This is why we don't have any human pets. This does not mean that we don't respect pets. I personally adore pets. I love pets myself. I have pets myself too. But by definition, you are in control of your pet. You take care of your pet. You take very good care of your pet. But at the end of the day, he's your pet. But we cannot have a human pet because the human has more dignity and respect than that. And it is the mind. So I think at the end of the day, really, for the betterment of humanity, let's work for more mutual respect. We've been living in a crazy world for many, many, many centuries now. Things start with skirmishes, and then you have indignities, and then we have ordeals, atrocities, wars, etc., 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 etc. And where did this take us at the end? Like if the faith and the mind. If either this group or that group do not seek peace and cannot find the way to peace, then I'm very sorry, they are both useless. They are both useless. So peace is the name of the game. Dear viewers, thank you very much for being with us tonight. Until we meet again, please take very good care.